I'm Matt.
I'm Kerry.
We are the Stagmer brothers of Baltimore Knife and Sword. We're going to be building some of your favorite weapons, and some weapons that you've never seen before.
This is Man-at-Arms, Reforged. With Halo 5 coming out, we decided to revisit the game. Looking back at your comments, nothing has been requested as much as the gravity hammer.
There's a couple variations, and I'm going to plan through some different concepts that people have been making and come up with a version of our own. All right, I went ahead and made a full-scale drawing, transferring my patterns to some foam board. You'll see here the black lines. They represent the hard beveled edge that will grind onto here, and the inner part will be our overlay. Here I have the beginnings of what's going to be the hammerhead. Now this ought to be pretty substantial and hefty weapon here. It's going to stand probably 5.5 feet overall height. So we'll see how it turns out.
Before we can start fabricating this massive hammer, John's got to cut out dozens of parts. This is going to be a lot like putting together a 3D puzzle.
Now what a plasma torch does is it's basically like an electric arc welder. It strikes an electric arc, then it uses a compressed air source with the heat of the arc, turns the air into a plasma, hot plasma gas, and it literally vaporizes the metal as it cuts through. All right, now that we have our blade parts all cut out from the plasma, I need to deburr them, knock the dross off, which was left over from the cut. And I have my overlays. I'm going to knock the burrs off the outside corners.
Okay, so I have the back blade from the Halo gravity hammer in there heating up to be heat treated. It's a really wide blade, it just barely fits in our forge, but we got it in there, just enough space. I'm gonna pull it out when it's up to temperature, quench it in oil. Now that the blade is heat treated, John begins grinding in the bevels. These are really steep and small bevels, but he has to do it just right or it won't look like that futuristic blade that we're looking for.
To create the 3 modules that will be mounted on the striking face of our hammer, John started from thick wall tubing, slotted it, created some bevels, then polished it out on the sander.
Now we're getting ready to weld on the modules to the bottom of my overlays, which go onto the base of the hammerhead itself. I've got the first 2 already done. We're going to get ready to do the last one.
With all these pieces, John has a lot of welding to do. He starts with one piece, tack welds it, get it where he wants, and then solidly welds the seams. It's really important that these welds penetrate enough and are good and solid, or the whole thing will just fall apart when we smash stuff in the demos.
All right, now that we've got all the parts cut out and welded together for the main body, I'm going to go ahead and grind the welds flush so that our overlays fit on real nice and smooth.
Now that the base structure of our hammerhead is finished, John starts applying the overlays, which really starts to make it look like the Halo gravity hammer that we want to see.
All right, we've got all the overlays on. Now I'm getting ready to clean up the welds by hand. Things getting a little bit too heavy to hold, so I have to finish cleaning up my welds the hard way. An old-fashioned little angle grinder.
Before welding the overlays onto the blade, John has to make sure his edges are fully polished. He does this on the sanders, and then we'll go back to the welder and get the overlays applied. After drilling holes into the overlay, John lays down a MIG weld into these holes and blends it off for a blind weld. You won't see this seam at all, and it will look great after it's done.
It's now time to forge the handguard that goes onto the handle for the hammer. This looks a lot like a bicycle handbrake. Ilya's going to use the Nazel 2B to draw out some big thick stock into this piece. It's going to be awesome, and it's going to be the only hand forged piece on this weapon.
This is the handlebar for the gravity hammer. John gave me the approximate length. Let's check if the forging is to spec.
Okay, so John's really taking control on this build, which is really great. The one downside is I haven't been allowed to touch it, but he's gone for the day. So let's go sneak in his shop and see what he's got going. Wow, this thing freaking looks awesome. Oh God, it is heavy. He wasn't lying. Oh, this is awesome. I don't think Man-at-Arms has ever made anything this futuristic looking. Oh, the shape is really great. Oh God. Blade looks great. Overlay's done just right. I can't wait to see this thing mounted. The lower blade mount that's going to be attached to the handle is going to be made out of square stock. John cuts the pieces to length, moves to the screw press using a V-shaped die block, and bends a 90-degree angle. The pommel for our hammer, aka the counterbalance, is going to be first turned on the lathe.
All right, this is the step that we turned down on the lathe yesterday to fit into the piece of pipe, which I'll weld on later. And eventually I'll machine a slot. And after I shape my little knuckle bow here, we'll put that on.
You saw Ilya give us a rough forging for this handguard. John's now showed me exactly what he wants for the form, and I'm going to grind it to that point and then polish it out.
In a lot of trial and error, we've found that it's easiest to clean pipe using the slack of a sander and carefully spin it along the surface. Gives you an even finish, and it's a lot quicker. Not exactly the safest way, but it's the best. We now weld on the handle support to the steel pipe handle.
Now we've got the handle rear support bracket welded on. Before I clean up the welds, I'm going to test fit it into the main body. All right, once we have all the components fit together, I'll do my final welding assembly prior to cleanup and paint. Right now we're in the final stages here. I'm leather wrapping the 2 grips for the gravity hammer using an industrial glue gun and some strips of heavy chap leather.
I actually like the way this hammer looked in raw metal, but now that the base coat's on and the color's coming in, it's really starting to pop. We really put John to task on this build. He did almost the entire thing himself with just a little help here and there. Many hours went into this, and it was extremely heavy when it was finished. It explains the name Gravity Hammer. Click here to subscribe, or click here to watch more episodes. Thanks for watching Man-at-Arms Reforged. We need to know what you want the guys to build, so tell us in the comments below what weapons you want to see next.